Today on the Nerdy Gritty, with Jojo Rabbit soon to release in theaters, we talk about what makes good satire.
Hey y'all, welcome to That There Nerdy Gritty, where we done delve deep into the details of pop culture.
Yeah!
I'm Dez.
I'm Fox.
Fox, weird things are happening in the world of Twitch.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't new.
No,
Twitch has had weird problems for
I'll
a
say
while.
this: Microsoft knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
When they brought Mixer out, they picked
yeah.
the perfect time
Start
for
seeing
this.
the cracks in the Twitch juggernaut.
So recently, people have been getting suspensions and strikes on their Twitch account
Yep.
for sexually inappropriate things.
Which is the general concept. Like, they're
Right.
not being very specific with what they're...
Yeah, even
That's
their
just-
TOC, their terms and conditions,
Right.
are vague, to say the
Yes,
least,
right.
in that area. And I'll say this, first and foremost, I'm glad those exist in terms and conditions.
Oh, sure. And I think it should be vague. I
Right.
think vagueness in those it gives them room to
say this is and
say,
this
hey,
is not.
this is why.
Right. But...
Yes. But when it in practice turns out to be doing what they're doing, that's the problem.
Right. Fox, what have you been up to, man? What's going on in the life of the Fox?
I went to Rose City Comic-Con on Saturday.
How was that?
And it was real fun. That thing is getting bigger and bigger. Like, it was noticeably more busy this year. I went on Saturday, the busiest day. I did last year also. And almost to its detriment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just, most of my time is spent on the expo floor. I don't really go to panels and stuff, not because I'm not interested, but because Comic-Con, I'm in the minority of people, I think, where it's a bunch of comic shops that I could never... Like, normally it would take 4 hours for me to drive to this shop in Washington
Right.
somewhere, but they're going to be here, so I'll go dig through their boxes and try to add to my collection.
I have been watching a lot of bad movies.
Ah, good.
And not on purpose.
Oh, good?
So, I guess I'll do all three at once here.
Sure.
So, I have been, if you guys don't know, I've been post-surgery. I've now been struggling with a migraine that's been going on for about 2 months now, and we think it's a spinal fluid issue. Anyway, that's not the important part is of this in my story. The important part is that by the end of the day, I'm usually like, you know what, I don't care. I'm so done with the world right now, like in so much pain.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time I just, like, when my wife and I are sitting down to relax, I'm like, just pick something.
Just
I
put a
don't
thing.
care what, just put on a thing. So we watched The Spy Who Dumped Me, starring Mila Kunis and SNL girl.
Yeah, dang it.
I want to see Kristen Wiig, but that's not it.
No, she's... Curses, she's one of the funniest people on SNL of all time.
She's hilarious. Yeah, she is.
Dang it. Anyway, Spy Who Dumped Me.
It was, get this, wait, bad. It was not good.
Shock!
Gasp. Came downstairs to Bedtime Stories.
With Adam Sandler.
Yeah, Adam Sandler.
I saw that
Disney
like
movie.
twice in theaters.
Did you? What?
It was free. It was when I worked at the theater, so I got it for free, and I just...
Man, you couldn't
Sure, why
pay
not?
me to watch that again.
No, yeah, it's... Not saying it was good, just saying... I watched so many movies that it just didn't matter at a certain point.
I guess that's fair.
whatever. I just watched the movie.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
I
Adam
just-
Sandler's bad at making movies.
Then lastly, we watched a Netflix movie called Secret Obsession, and this one had potential.
I've seen just the image of it, and it looks like a Lifetime movie.
It's better than that. I'll give it
like
more
just
credit.
the concept. It's evil bad man has secretly obsessed or something like that.
So, number one, the acting was not great.
Okay.
But it's a Netflix B movie. You can't expect it to be a top-notch.
I mean, that
acting
doesn't
thing.
make the acting better. It still means it's bad
Right.
for the movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Yep. Those are my bad movies.
I also watched some bad movies.
Oh yeah, what'd you
Much
watch?
less intentionally though, and one good one. But let's. So I had jury duty this week.
Oh yeah.
Which was very fascinating. Not really a topic for this podcast, but the first day was me sitting in a room for 9 hours and just
Right.
sitting there waiting. But they had a TV playing, and it was like daytime movies. I don't know, like FX type thing.
You got to be more prepared than this.
Well, they
man.
well, yeah, I mean, I did. I brought a book. I brought whatever. But
Do you bring your Switch?
yes, but I didn't have the game I wanted to play. So anyway, so on the TV, I kind of watched 2 movies. Kind of means they were on and I glanced up. Oh no, 3 movies actually.
Ooh.
Now that I remember that I glanced up, and I would probably say I watched 80 to 90% of all 3 of these movies. The first one is dang it, I can't even remember the names. That's how bad these movies are. Oh, Trainwreck with
which is a good description of the movie.
Amy Schumer and also SNL man. He was also in the It movies. Basically,
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader. Thank you. Also, yes, it's about a girl who doesn't make good personal choices, and then meets a guy who's a good person, and she doesn't know. Like it's dumb. But I did watch one good movie, and this is surprisingly not on daytime television. Faith and I watched a movie called Mid-90s.
Ooh, okay.
Came out last year. I think it was last year. It's about the same time as 8th grade.
It's like my time, man.
Mid-90s. That was the movie. It's directed by Jonah Hill. His first movie. I think he also wrote it. Was one of the writers. And that's essentially what it was like a nostalgia piece about the mid-90s. It was about like a 10-year-old kid in, I want to say Southern California, probably, who has a crappy home life, no dad, older brother who beats him up. Like, they have an interesting relationship. Mom who is getting better, but has not always been the best mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about him, like, meeting these group of skateboard kids who are, mid-teens, late teens, whatever, and just kind of wanting to hang out with them, and then he does, and it's just kind of like his experience with that. It was pretty good. I'd say it was pretty good.
On the video game front, have been playing more Bloodborne, which is we talk about that.
You've borne lots of blood,
right? But here's, I'm hitting a thought, and I almost am like afraid to say it.
Oh,
am I good at Bloodborne?
Oh no! Don't do that. You're gonna be real bad next time you play.
I know exactly.
For me, video games, I'm gonna go real quick because I want to get down to the nitty gritty. But Borderlands 3. Hey, remember Borderlands 2? This is that, but with some cool new additions.
That's
like it's Borderlands 2 again with some cool things added to it. So good, really good, really really great. Like, but nothing revolutionary. As well as I'm just want to Link's Awakening, the remake comes out today. I'm leaving from here to go pick it up and play it. So
nice,
very excited for that.
Good.
But that's enough talking.
Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Let's do that. Hey everybody, before we get down to the nerdy gritty, I just want to point out that if you're hearing this, you are listening to the short version of the podcast of the nerdy gritty. If you are interested in hearing what we call the director's cut, you can head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/dezandfox. And if you become a tier 2 or tier 3 patron, either $5 or $10 a month, then you would get access to the director's cut, which is a much longer version, usually about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of bonus content, as well as you'll gain access to all of the other content that we put on our Patreon. That means bonus videos, that means exclusive content, content you get before it comes out on YouTube, lots of games that we play. But if you can't do that, we really appreciate you for just listening, for liking, for sharing, for just being a fan. So thank you very much. Let's get down to the nerdy gritty.
So in just a few days, in fact, when you're hearing this, when does it release?
No, it comes out in a couple weeks.
A couple of weeks.
October
okay.
18th.
And okay. So wow,
a
man,
month.
I have been off on dates.
You really have.
Really big.
I think you forget that the month of October exists right
That
now.
must be it. I'm just trying to skip October, go straight to Halloween because I love it so much.
Well, October 31st is Halloween, so.
Yeah, but I can cut off the first 30 days.
Okay, there we go.
But
I forgot you have that power.
Right. Take that, October. I just did it. Anyway, so in a few weeks, a movie called Jojo Rabbit is going to be releasing. It's Taika Waititi, Lake Titicaca, who...
That's his name.
Who directed Thor Ragnarok.
As well as other movies like What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People.
He's 100% known for Thor Ragnarok.
Sure,
Yes.
but that's not all he's done.
No, I love What We Do in the Shadows. That movie's hilarious.
Yes.
And he's hilarious in it. He directed Thor Ragnarok. He also played Korg in Thor Ragnarok.
Hey, I'm cool.
He has made a movie about a young boy in Nazi Germany who is like in the Hitler Youth, the Nazi Youth program
Sure,
or whatever,
yeah.
and he has an imaginary friend who is Hitler. Hitler's his imaginary friend, played by Taika Waititi. And I guess the premise of the movie is that he finds out that his mom has been harboring a Jewish girl about his age, and now he's being hit with this decision on, does he really believe the whole Nazi thing, whatever, going back and forth. But the Nazi party is definitely held in satire. It is 100% a joke. The whole Nazi party is a joke. Now, reviews have been coming out for this movie, and the reviews are very middling. In fact, I think we saw the Metascore was 51. 52, just above middling.
Yep.
And this made us want to, and the Metascore exists, or a lot of the opinions are right down the middle because they say it's a good movie, but the satire is very safe.
It's more safe than satirical.
Right.
Really.
It is just a safe comedy that mocks Nazis and says to be a good accepting
Yeah, don't be
person.
a Nazi.
Yeah, don't be a Nazi.
Unfortunately, that is controversial for some people, but for those of us who are not racists, yeah.
I don't know. Okay,
that's
we're not going to
existence.
get into that
That's
point.
a whole
right
thing.
there.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, so we want to talk about that as well as, you know what? We'll get to the other side of that.
We will.
We'll get
This
to this
is a
side
big
of that in
topic.
bit
We
here.
got a few
Yes.
things to hit.
So we want to talk about what makes good satire.
Yeah.
But before we even get to that, Fox, why don't you define satire for us?
Well, satire to me is essentially using like a fictional story to comment on or even poke fun at real life.
right.
I can look up an actual definition if you want, but I think most things are going to fall into that.
No, I think that's a great definition of
you're
it.
using fiction to comment on reality.
And it's mostly going to be in a exaggerated sense.
Yeah, often exaggerated, and often it's making fun of those in power, people, like those in a higher station.
So classic satire movies. If you were to ask me what's a classic satire movie, the first thing I would say is Starship Troopers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Starship Troopers to me, when I saw it forever ago, I was like, oh, they're 100%. Like, even as a young man, I recognized that part of this was mocking and poking fun.
Yeah.
Specifically the propaganda films that they show and things like that
Yeah.
in it are really, really blatantly satire.
RoboCop is also not
RoboCop
as
was
much,
one that
but
I didn't even know.
Oh, yeah.
You told me that it was satire, and I'm like, what?
it really is.
And I went in, and then I thought about it as you were supposed to have done.
Right.
But the reason I didn't get it is because when I was a kid when I saw
Sure,
it for the
sure,
first time.
and it's much less. There's less. It's more of an action movie
Right.
than a satire.
But the idea is, a law without emotion.
right,
You
right.
know, was the idea in that. And-
Corporation taking over. and
right,
About
absolutely.
profit rather than
And so there are a lot of satire movies out there. What makes good satire? How do we successfully poke fun or maybe even turn a lens onto something that we disagree with or we are displeased with while also making a good film? So let's go into a couple of these movies that we've talked about here. What do you think makes RoboCop or Starship Troopers or anything to that nature good satire?
For me, to be general about it, a good satirical piece of art is good regardless of the accuracy of its satire.
Mhm.
Or, okay, that as well as regardless of your feelings on the thing that is being made fun of. So I think Starship Troopers is like a classic early 90s, like
Right.
just or RoboCop. RoboCop is a perfect movie. It is a perfect film. Now, it's not Schindler's List, obviously. It's not the quality, it's not the peak of the art of filmmaking.
Right.
But as far as structure goes, as far as comedy goes, as far as like script
trying
writing
to
goes, all the things that a movie needs to do well, it does all those things perfectly.
Right.
And so regardless of how you feel about, corporate takeover and law enforcement and all these things and abuse of power and all like that it makes fun of through this story, regardless of how you feel about that, if you are watching it as a child and don't even register any of that, it's still a quality film. It's the same thing with like Allegory, where Allegory is really great when the story that's being told is really is good, regardless of whether or not you register that it's allegorical.
Right.
So like Narnia, really great story. Does it matter if you recognize that Aslan is literally Jesus? No, it doesn't. It's still a really great story. And so that to me is what makes something satirical good.
I think that it's important to recognize that the purpose of satire also should, in most cases at least, make you feel a little bit uncomfortable or have you recognize something. I'm just flipping through some of the examples here, but movies like Idiocracy or Thank You for Smoking or even things like Borat are ones that when you watch these movies, you see, like, especially like Idiocracy, you see it and you laugh at it, but then there's a part of you inside that's like, hey, but that could really happen, huh?
Wait a minute.
That part of this could, like, oh, geez, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
Or to see the way people react to Borat, the character Borat, and again, it just there's some uncomfortability in that because of the realism behind it. When you watch Starship Troopers and you see those propaganda films, you chuckle and you laugh, but then maybe you see an actual army commercial, and you're like, ooh, there's some realism to that. There really, really is some realism to that. And what Starship Troopers does really well is it shows you the other side of war and the loss and the gore.
Right.
And like it's again actively gory, and they show a lot of blood.
It's over the top on purpose.
Right. To show you like, hey, we like to show you these propaganda films of people smiling and saluting and things like that.
Right.
But also, here's somebody's face getting shot.
Yeah.
Here's somebody being stabbed through the chest, things like that. And kind of juxtaposing those two things next to each other, where there is a realism that a lot of times we totally overlook. There's a realism to the world that like racism, like straight up racism, in the Jojo rabbit mindset that we normalize in our world today. A lot of people normalize at least racism in our world today, but then maybe you watch a movie like Jojo Rabbit and you see the amount of racism in that and the way that people, I'm assuming, I haven't seen the movie yet obviously, but the way that the people rationalize it or say it's okay, then we see that again in our world as well. Right. The way that people rationalize it and make it sound okay, and you're like, oh, that's just a little bit discomforting.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
And so I think satire, in a sense, should make us take a look at the real world and feel a little bit uncomfortable about it.
Right.
That's why, again, Starship Troopers, I think, does a really good job with that.
Yeah, there's a really great moment in Starship Troopers where it's when Rico is registering for the mobile infantry, and he goes up to the desk, and the guy sitting at the desk, he's like, or it's the guy like taking all the papers, and it's like, mobile infantry, huh? Good for you. Mobile infantry made me the man I am today. And then he like pushes back from his desk, and you see that he is missing like both legs and an arm.
Yeah.
And at this, like the very same moment, you're like, it just reveals like the horror and quote unquote, maybe the good of war, where it like matures you and make like, in the way that he's meaning it.
Right.
I'm a better person because of this, but he's also missing limbs and has like seen the terrible things that come from this war. Yeah. Man, Starship Troopers is such a good example of
it really is.
Yeah. There's so many things like, this moment and this moment and this moment, but that's not what we need to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, I think successful satire is something that really makes us think about the world and its realism.
Yeah.
And maybe even
it's necessary for satire.
Yeah. Like a movie like This is Spinal Tap.
Sure.
And it maybe may not make us look at political things, but the people we idolize and see them as human beings.
Yeah.
Movie, I mean, this is political, but in a different sense. Bulworth. You ever see Bulworth?
I have not, no.
It's a movie about a politician who finds out that he's going to die. He's got like a terminal illness. And so he decides, you know what? I'm just maybe I'm getting the story mixed up with another. Either way, bottom line is for some reason he decides he wants to tank it. He wants to lose. He wants to be ridiculous. And so he just 100% culturally appropriates like inner city black culture.
Oh yeah.
And he like raps and he wears like you know, and he's an older white man and he just looks a fool, but at the end of it all people end up loving him for it and thinking it's awesome. And again, it's kind of turning this camera on the politicians that we appreciate and makes us think to ourselves, why do we like them? Do we like them because we think they're cool, or do we like them because of their politics? And Bulworth is saying, no, we like our politicians because we think they're cool.
Or they just or what they do doesn't matter as much as what you know their political alignment or that's really good. There's a lot of, man, I'm just coming up with example after example in my mind of good, like Always Sunny in Philadelphia TV show. It's
dark
not
comedy.
It is not first and foremost a satire, but a lot of its episodes, a lot of its content is, yes, dark comedy, the darkest of comedy sometimes, but also just kind of like poking fun at and revealing just human nature, just how selfish we can be. Like oftentimes it's just like takes the things that we can do in our own self-interest to such an extreme that it feels unrealistic. But then you're like, okay, I could see it. Okay, yeah, no, I get what you're making fun of there. And so, yeah, good satire should make you feel uncomfortable.
I mean, shows like Always Sunny or Arrested Development.
Yeah, even Seinfeld to a mild
Seinfeld
degree.
was the original of these.
Yeah.
Where it's a satire on our culture and how much our culture has gained apathy for one another.
Yeah.
And so I know people like my friend Josh hates Arrested Development.
Sure.
Because his in-laws are actually like that, he says. His in-laws, it's not just that he doesn't think the show is funny. He sees these people and he's like, no, that's real sometimes, guys.
Yeah.
And these people aren't just funny. They bug me because I have to deal with it in real life and it's the worst.
Yes.
And again, satire is meant to reflect, kind of, again, turn that mirror, this societal satire turns the mirror on ourselves and is making us look at. Now, I think what some of the issue of Jojo Bunny is safe
Jojo
satire.
Rabbit.
Jojo
you keep
Rabbit.
saying Bunny.
I keep saying Bunny. I do. Jojo Rabbit is safe satire comes when it's not really making you question anything or think about anything is not already obvious. Hey, don't be a racist.
Look, we get it. Yeah.
We're not breaking any new ground.
Nazis are bad.
Yeah, Nazis bad.
That's been said before.
So, but I think shows like Arrested Development do a good job of turning that mirror on us, or Mean Girls is a good one that turns that mirror on us and makes us look at
movie.
it. Yeah, it's a weirdly good movie.
I've seen Mean Girls probably 20 times.
It's a weirdly good movie because, especially for teenagers, they see these characters of the plastics. I think they're called.
They call them plastics. Yeah.
Yeah, they see these characters, and some of them are like, "Oh, they're so cool," and the irony in that is that they're supposed to be the worst,
right?
And it's just, again, this mirror on what we accept as cool and popular as human beings, when we really, really shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, or specifically Mean Girls, not even just necessarily that this type of person is bad. It's not really about who they like. One of the great parts of that movie is just toward the end when, like, everybody is kind of revealed to be a plastic at some point,
right? To
some extent. They all like harbor these feelings of self-absorption, or are mean toward others for specific reasons or unjust reasons. Like, everybody even if you aren't the most popular, pretty whatever person in the school who is, the plastic, as they would call them, you might have an issue with this too. It like raises up this thing on a pedestal that we can point to and say, you people are terrible, and then reveals, oh, we should be pointing at ourselves to some extent also.
Absolutely.
It's such a good movie.
Yeah. So that to me is much more poignant satire.
Yeah.
As well as like Arrested Development, poignant satire. Whereas the flack that Jojo Rabbit is getting is for being safe satire.
Sure. Yeah.
And things like that. So a question that I really did want to talk about today, though, and what I was about to talk about at the very beginning, was when can even satire go too far? Now, I wanted to ask this question because I was listening to the podcast Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell. Please go listen to his podcast.
He's
It's fantastic.
It's really great.
There is one episode about Randy Newman's, I think Good Old Boys was the name of the album. And as he's talking about this, I guess Randy Newman's albums before, if you don't know who Randy Newman is, you've probably heard the song, You've Got a Friend in Me.
Yep.
For Toy Story. That's written by Randy Newman.
That's Randy Newman.
Before his Toy Story fame, he was already pretty famous. Yeah.
There's a reason why they chose him to
right,
do
absolutely. Before his Toy Story fame, he released a lot of albums, and every single album was apparently a concept album might be the right way to put it, but was written from the perspective of a character.
Yeah.
The whole album was written from the perspective of one fictional person that he created. And this movie, Good Old Boys, was about a guy who lives in Louisiana, lives in the South somewhere, and is a little bit racist and is kind of a good old boy. And there are really good songs in that. Like one of the songs is a song about the main character going out and getting drunk and staying out late with his friends, then coming home and his wife is already asleep. And because she's asleep and because he's a little bit drunk, he sits down and looks at her, and it's just kind of this ballad about how beautiful she is and how much he loves her. Because he's so masculine, he could never say it to her face, and he couldn't even say it sober. But because this moment when she's asleep and he's drunk and the moon's coming in their room and he's just looking at her, and it's about how much he loves her and how beautiful she is and how much he appreciates her and all that. And it's just this incredible song, this really good song.
Is that Marie? I would assume.
Maybe.
Anyway.
But there was another song on there called Rednecks. And I do want to give a bit of a content warning here. I am going to read this for what it is, and I am not going to be happy while reading it for what it is, but I will. I had the lyrics up, and then I Googled Satire films and lost the lyrics. Here they are. So I'm going to read just a couple of lyrics here from the song, but it says, if you don't know who Lester Maddox is, Lester Maddox was a governor of Alabama, maybe?
He was, let's see.
I want to say Alabama, but the bottom line is that he fought against the civil rights movement. He fought for segregation. He wanted to keep segregation there. And
Georgia. 75th governor of the U.S. state of Georgia.
So the first stanza, what's the word I'm looking for? The first verse. Thank you. Says, last night I saw Lester Maddox on a TV show with some smartass New York Jew, and the Jew laughed at Lester Maddox, and the audience laughed at Lester Maddox too. Well, he may be a fool, but he's our fool. If they think they're better than him, they're wrong. So I went to the park and I took some paper along, and that's when I made this song. We talk real funny down here. We drink too much and we laugh too loud. We're too dumb to make it to no northern town, and we're trying to keep the niggers down. And I even feel just uncomfortable saying that word.
Yeah.
But the chorus of this is, we're rednecks. We don't know our ass from a hole in the ground. We're rednecks. We're trying to keep the niggers down. And the whole premise of this song is it is a satirical song coming from the perspective of a racist seeing his racist idol, Lester Maddox, being mocked on a talk show, which is a real thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You can look up Lester Maddox.
Lester Maddox was on the Cabot Show.
The Cabot show with Jim Brown.
He was a staunch segregationist.
Right. Staunch segregationist. And Jim Brown, a very large black man who played football.
Yep.
Tried to have a really civil conversation with him about segregation. And Lester Maddox, of course, got all up in arms about it.
If I remember correctly, he the first thing he says, like, I thought you were James Brown. Or
yeah,
something.
I
like
thought
he
you
thought
were
he was the singer James Brown. Like, okay, well, that's where that's going to start.
So, but then, of course, Cabot, his job is to make people laugh.
It's a comedy show.
And so he mocks Lester Maddox for a while. And so it takes this main character watching this and getting all mad about it and writing a song about how proud he is of being a redneck.
Yeah.
And over again, it's just mocking that mindset, mocking that Southerner racist stereotype mindsets. So there are lyrics in here like, we have college men from LSU who went in dumb and came out done too. We don't know our ass from a hole in the ground. We're too dumb to make it to no northern town. All kinds of things like that that are just blatantly saying how stupid you must be to have an opinion like this.
Right.
But people in the South loved it.
Yes.
It kind of became an anthem for a lot of the rednecks in the South who agreed with this, to the point that when not Lester Maddox, dang it, Randy Newman would go to the South, people would ask him, "We're do rednecks," and they'd sing along and they'd cheer. And then a young black man wrote a letter to Randy Newman saying, "Hey, when you perform that song, I get super uncomfortable, and I do not like it." And so Randy Newman never performed the song again after that, never publicly performed the song. And so clearly this is satire, and clearly the purpose of this song is to mock people who hold this opinion.
This is by Randy Newman. Like, this is his words. This is a satirical song.
Yes. And so, but it didn't work, I guess.
It kind of failed.
And people in the South loved it, stood behind it, and loved every word of it. So my question to you, Fox, and that I want to talk about for a little while here is there a time that satire can go too far? Did Randy Newman err in this? Was he not clear enough that this was satire? How do you handle a situation like that, would you think?
I feel like there are two different ways that it could quote unquote go too far.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, well, okay. There's two different avenues we could talk about here.
Okay.
There's too far as in like this song where the audience response to it was not what the intent was. The author's intent was to make fun of the people who love this song. And so he maybe went too far in the content, like as in like too far to not be satirical, really, to a lot of people. Or in the other context where we could talk about was too far in like how explicit, I suppose it could be, where it's like crossing a line, I guess I'll say.
Right.
And to me, an example of that could be Sacha Baron Cohen with a couple of his movies like Borat or Bruno,
right,
where like he has a point to them. The older I get, the more I understand like what those movies are about. They're not just about look at this goofy character and these weird situations. Right. It's like satire does, turning a mirror on because the people he's interacting with as these characters think he's an actual person, and it's revealing people's biases and stuff. But it comes to a point where Borat is not seen as a master class of satire. It's not like people understand it's a satire for, some people understand it.
Yeah, I was saying.
But that's not what it's like remembered for. It's remembered for my wife, and just like stupid like comedy that doesn't really have any purpose. It's just he said a funny thing that I thought was funny, and so I say it now. So to me, those are the two categories of going quote unquote too far. For my personal opinion, I don't think there's a line you can cross. I think that's the point of art, is that you can do what you want and say what you want. And, it might not be successful, but I don't like self-censorship because it's too far it should not be a thing. So I guess I can understand where people might come from when they say it's too far, but I disagree.
I think that there is a point in which you probably should have expected to miss the mark.
Sure.
I think that Randy Newman, who is not from the South that I know of, I don't think he is, I'm guessing here, but
I have no idea.
My thought is that he had no expectation. He thought he was being staunchly clear that this was like a satire song
from that liberal Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that if you play that song in Los Angeles, people will probably 100%
New York City's going to eat it up.
Know full well this is satire.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, let's laugh at those
dumb
rednecks, or whatever. But he was just not educated enough, nothing against him, but saying that he just wasn't aware that his thought was, this is extreme.
This
and
is
nobody's
obviously
going to get behind this. What he didn't realize is there are people in the South who hold all these opinions.
Right.
Who literally step by step are like, yeah, we dumb. I'm proud to be a dumb redneck. Yeah, we racists, and I'm proud to be a racist. Yeah. And they are 100%
We're going to keep those N-words down.
Yeah.
Finally, somebody from lamestream media from that old liberal California understands me. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would just think that he never guessed that there would be people that would say, I 100% agree with that song.
Yes, yeah.
That's my song.
Unironically love this song.
Right. And I think that maybe at the time that he wrote it, there wasn't an avenue for him to be able to educate himself on that. But to at least these days be able to stop and be like, okay, is this going to land?
Yeah.
Is this going to, or people...
What could the response to this be?
So I think that Bruno... I think that Sacha Baron Cohen probably knew full well that most people were not going to take this seriously, that they were going to see it as a 100%
when they
comedy,
see the movie,
and that's it. Yeah, they're not going to be like, that was a nice piece of satire. And to me, I think that's where his movies, and I think he would agree with this, are probably 75-80% comedy and 20% satire.
Well, yeah.
And so I think at that point, satire misses the mark. I think that if your purpose of satire is entirely missed, and that the vast majority of people, and again, I agree with you, I don't know if too far is the right word, but missing the mark, I think, is a much better
not
term.
Being successful.
Yeah, unsuccessful
satire.
And so I think unsuccessful satire is one that is either diluted by the other things that you're doing, like Sacha Baron Cohen's examples with Borat and Bruno,
sure,
or are taken too seriously or agreed with too much on the Randy Newman side of things.
Yeah.
So, for example, if there were to be maybe a European person who makes an action movie that's a satire of America, and he releases it over here and we just love it.
There's probably plenty of them.
We just love it because it's good. I think that as satire would miss the mark. Like, for example, if somebody stepped up and said Hobbs and Shaw was satire, I would be like, I can see that.
I understand.
It is so ridiculous. It is so over the top.
Now there is a difference between satire and wink wink, we know what we're doing.
Right. And so I think that where that line is blurred. I think if you are not sure, so if somebody came to me and told me that Hobbs and Shaw was satire, I would believe them, but I would say it is 100% unsuccessful satire.
Yeah. I believe you, but also do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think there is absolutely the potential for your satire to either get diluted by everything else that's going on, for it to be too much of another genre, too far in another place to even be considered satire, which again, I think Starship Troopers nails it. Yeah. I think it nails it. It's a fun action movie. It's enjoyable to watch, but also you definitely know that there's something more going on.
Yeah.
You don't leave that movie thinking to yourself, all of that was totally normal action movie.
Yeah, this was a great movie.
Right.
Go Empire.
There's so much more to it. Whereas a song like Rednecks, man, anywhere else in the world, they would have seen that as satire 100%. But right there in the South, it went over their heads.
And
is that his fault, though?
No, exactly. That's what I'm about to say. The hard part is it's not Randy Newman's fault. 100% not his fault.
Yeah.
People like there's debate amongst people about this, but I believe that author's intent is on the importance scale very close to being equal with audience interpretation. Because like everything is written for a reason.
Right.
Every single movie or book or comic or whatever you've ever read or heard or listened to, there was always a purpose behind it. There's nothing that's written randomly. And so we, to fully understand what we're listening to or hearing or reading or whatever, we should take pains to understand what the person was intending with it. And so, but at the same time, if we don't know what they meant and I just heard a song called Rednecks and it agreed with my worldview, like that's not on Randy Newman. It's not on me. Like this is what my interpretation of this piece of art that I just heard. I don't know anything about Randy Newman except for apparently he agrees with me. So it's a great song. And so I don't think like I don't agree that it's Randy Newman's fault. Like I can't blame somebody for not getting it.
Yeah.
Or I can't blame somebody else for not getting what I just wrote. Or blame myself for them not getting it. There we go. That's the one.
You can't blame
I can't blame somebody else or blame. Dang it!
You can't blame yourself for somebody else not getting your satire.
Now, do you all just get what I said? Because I don't. No, I can't blame myself for somebody else not understanding what I intend.
So, but don't you think for a moment you could stop? And this is an honest question. This isn't debate because I don't know the answer to this. But don't you think there's a point in which you could stop and say, maybe I should have done this instead? I guess hindsight's always 20/20.
Of course. Hindsight is 20/20, and it's impossible to fully interpret or guess what everybody else is going to say, or understand what you mean by, like, for example, this actually came up recently on a Facebook video game post or video game page that we are a part of. I posted something about, I took a picture of, they were like the gift cards or the pre-order cards of certain video games that you can buy at Walmart of like Borderlands 3, which has like a picture of somebody with a gun. And this was after Walmart decided to stop doing like advertising for violent games. And I posted that picture on our this Facebook page with the caption that said, "Oh no, advertisement of a violent video game, gonna have to do a shooting now." And most people that responded either just said, just thumbs up or whatever, or nothing. But somebody in a way said that it was offensive to them, or it was not
too far.
Something to that nature. I disagree.
Right.
But I couldn't have, like, when I was posting, I was just like, everybody in here, we've talked about these things like, they're going to get what I mean. Like, but I couldn't predict that somebody is going to say that. And I don't blame myself. And I didn't take it down, because at the same time, we also have to recognize, like, you can be offended. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I have to change what I intend or change what I write.
And I mean, your thing was satire-esque, but I think that offending people should be a natural part of satire.
Yeah, well, we already said that makes you uncomfortable. Yeah,
I think there should people who are offended by satire.
If there aren't, then it's not satire.
Right. But people who agree with it and who support it.
Yeah.
That's when I think satire falls short. And you're convincing me, and I think I agree with you that can't be the fault of the author of the satire, the creator of the satire, but it is saying that the satire was not as successful as it could have been, and maybe an example for future people to write or whatever else, and for people to be able to look back and say, you know what? Again, RoboCop's a good example. I didn't even know it was satire until I was 36 years old about 4 months ago when you told me it was. I had no idea, because I saw it as a kid. I thought it was super cool. I've watched it a few times since then. Man. Yeah. And I loved it. It was cool, Robot Cop Man. But then you said it was satire, and I was like, oh,
wait a minute.
I see it now. So again, I think that's satire that, it's not bad satire. It's just satire that falls flat. So I think maybe to answer the question, maybe there isn't a satire that can go too far. Maybe too far isn't the right word, but I think there is satire that can
unsuccessful.
Fail.
Unsuccessful. Yeah, I think Randy Newman was also in the right. Like, I think it was smart to stop playing that song.
Yeah, and
it's a decent response.
I think top to bottom, that was successful. I honestly think it's a great satirical song.
Oh, sure, it's quality.
I love it that he's going in and he's sounding like a guy who's like, here's my opinion, but then he steps in and he says, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
Here's my opinion, and it's stupid. And I think it's a very well done. But I can also understand, and I think it was the 80s, maybe 70s when he wrote that song. 74 when he wrote that song, that there would be a lot of people who would 100% get behind it as well. And so I totally understand him stepping back and being like, oh, never mind.
Yep, guess we'll stop.
So I think top to bottom, that was the right process. And now I think people can learn from that.
You know what he should do is write a song about that situation. Write a song about how these people didn't get my song, and
we love that song named Rednecks.
Just go deep with it. Go meta.
So meta. Well, guys, Let us know what you think about satire. Let us know what one of your favorite examples of satire is. Let us know what you think about the definitions of satire we gave. And what do you think makes good satire? Let us know what you think satire is when it goes too far or when it fails. Talk to us. We'd love to hear you guys' opinions on things. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for support. Always remember that when you share this, when you spread the word, when you like it, it means the world to us. It really does, really helps us out. You guys are awesome. We appreciate your support. And always remember that save games, save lives.
See you next week.